Hello and welcome to the Porcelain Dawn channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing The Fell Sword by Miles Cameron. Hello and welcome to the Porcelain Dawn channel. Today's review is book 2 in the Traitor Sun cycle, The Fell Sword by Miles Cameron. As most of you viewing this will hopefully have seen, I've already reviewed the first book quite positively in my channel. I enjoyed it quite a lot. It was an above average fantasy tale with some very charming characters. So I was looking forward to this second book. And the second book takes place immediately after the first one. And you see the band, the mercenary band, go across into another country from what is sort of like a version of medieval Britain, I think. And they go over to a version of, I would say, Dark Age Rome. You know, this they talk about the fallen empire, how there's still vestiges of beautiful architecture and tradition and military formations and things like that that are a holdover from when the empire was a much more powerful thing. So yeah, it reminds me of Dark Age after the fall of Rome. The story itself starts off, not starts off, but maybe 5-10% in, it goes around a siege, much like the first one, a large siege. It's normal that there's going to be a lot of war in the both, because it's centered around a mercenary captain and his mercenary company. But I didn't find it as charming this time. I found that it wasn't a bad book by any stretch of the imagination, but I just felt like it was a little less charismatic than the first time. The characters lost a bit of their luster. The newly introduced characters like the Empress, or there's a student magician called Mortimer. There's sort of a Norse mercenary called Dirkensen. And I found these characters were a little bit less charming than the characters we were introduced to in the first one, and the characters from the first one, like the captain and several members of the mercenary company. I found they started to grate a little bit. I don't know if it was just too repetitive, or perhaps that they weren't written in such a warm way. In the first book, although it was quite violent, there was moments of levity that were quite interesting, and overall it had a nice flow. And this one, I felt it was quite plain, and the characters were less ingratiating. They sort of became a bit tiresome at points. Not completely. As I said, this isn't a terrible book. It's just marginally less good than the first one. The pacing was the same. It was regular action, which is written very well. Miles Cameron writes action very well. Not very emotional, not very explosive, but engaging. Still engaging. And his lexicon, the vocabulary they uses, as I mentioned in the first review, he does a great job of conveying the period, the items of clothing, the architecture, the weapons, all the different layers of armor, all the necessities for military campaign, food, logistics, how many arrows you need, the things that often get missed out when people are writing about war. He does, not heavily, he doesn't weigh it down, but it does convey that there is some research behind it. And for me, that shines through and shows that he's put work into this, and it does give it an authenticity, a sort of realism, if you will, that I do appreciate. Again, also with the violence and the action and the fighting, the way he writes about wounds and things like that, it also is a credit to him. I think it's very well done. There are some good parts in this that I really enjoyed, like there's a group called the Jacks, and I don't want to go into spoilers, but they were in the first book. They're sort of downtrodden field workers and serfs and peasants that rebel against the lords and join the wild, which is sort of the magical monsters and nature side. And they go on certain adventures that are quite interesting. The Ota Kwan, who's sort of outwall, as they're called, he joins these barbarians in the first book. I think that part is somewhat well done. Again, it was never a character that I was that interested, although he did have some good parts in the first one. He's promoted a bit more in the second one. The story wasn't uninteresting. It was just, it wasn't the most interesting. I was already, after the first one, I wasn't that interested in this character, even though he is well written. And then, yeah, the mercenary, the brunt of the story is around the mercenaries and around this empress and her court, and the emperor has been kidnapped, and all this you find out very quickly, I think in the first couple of pages. But I didn't find the empress to be an engaging character. She is multi-layered, at least in the facets that you see her just a little bit, but there is sort of nuance to her character. I just didn't find her very engaging or involved, or I didn't want to see more of her or know more about her, which I think is not a very good sign for a newly introduced character. And some of the characters that I did enjoy in the first one weren't really touched in the second one, and that's completely fine. That's completely normal. They've gone somewhere else. The book's not written specifically for me. You know, there were characters that I thought I really liked from the first one that in this one, like I said, they weren't that good or weren't as well utilized, I can say. Anyway, I don't want this to sound too negative. Like I said, it was slightly above average fantasy. Well, it was above average fantasy the first time. Not a classic, but a good, solid book. The second one's slightly less, still decent. I wouldn't say it's bad by any stretch of the imagination. It's still decent. I just think it was a little bit more tiresome as a read. And I will read the third one. So that tells you that I don't hate the second one. I will read the third one in the series to see how it develops from there. And I do have faith in Miles Cameron, the writer. I do think he is talented. So I will read it and I will review it on this channel. If you've read this book, please let me know what you thought, because I'm really interested to know what people's thoughts are between this one and the first one, how they've thought about the first one, how they thought about this one in relation to it. And if you have any other recommendations for me, as always, let them know down below. And please like and subscribe. I'll be back soon with more review videos. Thank you.